for Where Hollywood Hides. Here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke! I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
Here comes the judge. More cowbell.
Not special.
There's anything wrong with that. And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business.
Welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. This is podcast episode number 28. My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera-McCullough.
And we are kind of tired. We're exhausted, I think is the word. We have been so busy getting our book out, which will be released September 30th. And you can find Where Hollywood Hides Santa Barbara, Celebrities in Paradise. If you go to the website at wherehollywoodhides.com and order there, your book will be delivered. It will be shipped out September 30th, and you'll get a 20% discount buying at the website, as opposed to your local bookstore, where it will also be, and on Amazon, where it's always going to be available. Anyway, it's been a great experience, and we're pretty excited. The book is going to look even better than we thought.
So, I was reading, I am a big Beatles fan.
Indeed.
Not a Stones fan, a Beatles fan.
Please. Okay, go ahead.
So
the Stones, by the way, are still working and playing.
And the Beatle music is still being made into classical music.
That's true.
It was 50 years ago this year that the movie Hard Day's Night came out. At the time, the movie Hard Day's Night was a very unusual format for a motion picture. And they really didn't have any expectations on what it was going to be like. It ended up being a big hit, of course, because the Beatles had just come off a huge run of being the most fabulous.
The movie's 50 years old?
50 years old, Bob.
You're making me feel old. I remember seeing it like it was yesterday.
Did you even see it? You said you didn't like the Beatles.
I didn't. Well, but it was a huge deal at the time. I remember it was in black and white. It was kind of a documentary with a little bit of a story.
This is what they were saying. It was the first modern music video, which after that MTV came about, and it started the format for the concert films, like we loved the Katy Perry movie, and it all started from there. Right after the Beatles did the Hard Day's Night, the group The Monkees, remember?
Sure.
They did a motion picture,
right,
and it became a hit as well.
I must say, I did not see the Monkees movie.
I did.
Okay, well.
They were cute.
Bubblegum. Okay.
They were cute.
Hardly rock and roll.
You were still back in the Elvis days.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And also, I was looking at the TV movie sections, how we do research, and this was something interesting. In 1964, which is 50 years ago again, I'm sorry to keep bringing up 50 years.
You're killing me here.
The top biggest were only made for adults. Some of the movies were The Carpetbaggers, From Russia with Love, James Bond.
Loved it.
A Shot in the Dark. What a Way to Go, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, Pink Panther.
Panther was huge.
Viva Las Vegas, isn't that Elvis?
Elvis, yeah.
Dr. Strangelove.
Awesome. A classic. I'll watch that anytime.
Beckett and Man's Favorite. But the point of this article was those are the top 10 movies. Cut to 50 years, the top 10 movies are made for kids.
Right.
This year it was The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Lego Movie, Godzilla, Maleficent.
You saw
Divergent. That. Anyway, the point was they're making movies for kids.
The audience has changed completely. I think more adults are interested in what's on television these days than kids are.
And some more kid movies that will come at the end of the year are Planet of the Apes, Purge, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is coming back. Dumb and Dumber.
I'll see that.
Hunger Games. Horrible Bosses again.
Really?
Hobbit.
Like part 2? Horrible Bosses?
Yes, okay. Those are the franchises. Night at the Museum. Hot Tub Time Machine.
Hot Tub Time Machine. That sounds like it's going to be a classic.
You like hot tubs.
And time machines. Sure. I like all of it. Perfect.
Well, you know what I found interesting is taking my granddaughters to the movies. Even though they are kid movies and they're rated PG and PG-13, they are so adult-like.
Yeah, the bar has raised with respect to what's acceptable for kids these days, I fear.
So I'm bringing out the old kid movies, E.T.
Right.
And the old Teenage
Mutant Ninja
Turtles.
Right.
They look very different this year. The turtles.
I haven't not seen the new one.
They look kind of evil.
Yeah, they look mean. Yeah, that's for sure. But I want to see Hot Tub Time Machine.
I'm sure you do.
That's definitely on my wish
sure
list. Definitely on my wish list. We've got a number of new sponsors on the website and on the podcast. One of them is wine.com, America's #1 online wine retailer. They offer thousands of wines, gifts, accessories, and great discounts. They even have free shipping. After our years of working on Falcon Crest, we come to know quite a bit about what goes into a good glass of wine.
Yes, Bob, you have quite the palate.
Indeed, indeed. So just go to our website at wherehollywoodhides.com. You'll find the wine.com links there. You'll get great discounts, whether you're a casual wine drinker or a certified wine snob like I used to be. You'll find the best wine.com values through the links at wherehollywoodhides.com.
Speaking about wine, Napa Valley and their earthquake, huh?
Big time. I guess the price of wine will go up a little bit.
So I'm glad we still have some of that old wine from Napa Valley from the Falcon Crest days.
I wonder if that's going to...
do we? Do we have any more?
Yeah, we have it, but
too old.
I'm not sure I would be wanting to drink it. Yeah.
Right.
Today, I must tell you, I'm so excited. We have an interview with an old friend of mine who hired me on one of my very first television shows, Michael Sloan.
I have to interject real quickly.
Sure.
We go back, you and I, but I remember when you first started working with Michael, you came home and said, I think I need a new wardrobe, because you always talked about how well-dressed he was.
He always wore a sport coat and a really nice shirt. Sometimes he had a little silk square in his jacket pocket. And he wore real slacks.
The word classy, you said he looked very classy.
Yeah, he always looked classy, and I always felt like I had just, I don't know, come off the beach or something. But yeah, and it gave him a much more mature kind of a leadership persona. But Michael is a guy who's got credits, hold your breath here. He has written shows like Switch, McCoy, Columbo, Harry-O, McCloud, Quincy, Battlestar Gallactica, The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew Mysteries, Sword of Justice, Sheriff Lobo, BJ and the Bear, that's where we met. He did a thing called The Master, and then he's very well known for The Outer Limits, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and he created The Equalizer, which is going to be a feature this year, starring Denzel Washington.
Very exciting.
It's going to be huge, and Mike has just completed a novel that's been released from St. Martin's Press called The Equalizer. What great timing. And the interview is it's really touching base with an old friend and hearing great stories about the shows he's written. And he
also met his wife.
Right, Melissa Anderson, the actress, yeah. And in the podcast, our listeners will hear some great career advice for those who want to become television writers.
And something that I found very interesting and not that common, he sounded like he had a great respect for actors.
And he names a number of people he's worked with as his good friends. So here we go. Great conversation with Michael Sloan.
Hey, Bob. It's been a very long time.
It has indeed. And you sound exactly the same.
Well, so do you.
All right. Well, we're doing well then, aren't we?
Well, some things haven't changed anyway.
Right. My wife, Suzanne, is with us.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
We've done a little bit of research on you, and I've always known how prolific you were. But if you hear any paper rattling today, it's the list of your credits.
It's unbelievable.
Do you have any idea what the number is?
I have not the faintest idea.
It's well in the hundreds.
Oh, really?
Well, we printed it out, and it's like 6 pages, single-spaced. It's crazy.
What was the show that we worked on together? Was it BJ and the Bear?
BJ and the Bear. You and Dick Lindheim hired me.
That's right. I thought it was BJ.
Well, one of the things in doing these podcasts and in building our website, Where Hollywood Hides, we've had a chance to reflect on our careers, and Suzanne asked me, how did you exactly start writing in television? And I said, well, there was this guy named Michael Sloan.
That was a fun show. I mean, I wish they'd put it out in DVD. It's never been out.
Oh, really?
No, not to my knowledge anyway. Universal's funny about that. I mean, The Equalizer, they brought out the first season. But anyway, now, because of the movie, I'm sure, now they're going to bring out all 4 seasons. So the first one's out, and I think the second one just came out. And then they're going to bring out season 3 and season 4.
So you might actually see some checks for 59 cents.
Possibly.
Right.
Love those checks, though. We love those checks.
So, yeah, it wouldn't be much more than that. But yeah, I've never seen any DVDs for BJ and the Bear. Highly esoteric show that it was.
Right, indeed. It was quite a challenge. We'll get to there in a second. Mike,
sure.
Let's start at the very beginning. I'm really curious. I know you come from something of a theatrical family, but
right.
Give us an idea what your childhood was like, where you were born, Some of the, I guess, David Copperfield stuff, as Holden Caulfield would say.
More Holden than David Copperfield, probably. Well, I was born in New York, actually, which is funny that now that I'm back here in New York, I haven't lived in New York since I was a kid. Yeah, my folks were producers on Broadway, so it's a theatrical family, and I had a couple of well-known cousins. I had one of my cousins was Keenan Wynn, you know, the character actor.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, sure.
And then I also had another cousin, Milburn Stone, who played the old played Doc Adams in Gunsmoke.
Sure.
So I came from that background, and then when I was a kid, my folks were producing a play in London, so they moved to London. The play was quite successful, ran a couple of years, and then they just fell in love with London and stayed. So, excuse me, I was in London for about 16 years.
Oh, really?
And then
How exciting!
Yeah.
So you went to school
Well,
there.
it was an exciting time because it was, you know, the 60s and the Beatles and Carnaby Street and all that.
So you went to like an English prep school?
I went to an English school and I went to a drama school. However, my meteorically unsuccessful career as an actor, that didn't work out quite the way I wanted. But then I came
Michael,
back to...
you seem to have lost your English accent.
I haven't been back in about 20 years, but when I used to go back and forth a lot, as soon as I got to England, my English accent came back.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, and then I'd be gone a week or 2 weeks, whatever it was, and I'd get back to Universal, and my secretary would say, "Why are you talking all funny? What's good?" You know?
So that explains why when you and I worked together, you were always an example of sartorial splendor. You dressed very well and quite differently from a lot of California folks.
I've just never been a kind of T-shirt guy for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe that is being brought up in those formative years. But
Sure.
then, you know, so then I went to Los Angeles, you know, and started trying to, you know, get into television there.
So while you were in England, you had the show business entertainment bug, as it were?
I'd always written stuff, even, you know, when I was a teenager. I wrote a whole bunch of awful books when I was a kid and a teenager. So I'd always had that, you know, the writing thing. And actually, it's interesting. If I capsulize the story, the way I actually got an American credit was I used to love watching Columbo in England. And, you know, being a naive, you know, 24-year-old or whatever it was, I had no idea that not only, you know, if you weren't known, could you not write a script for Columbo, that they were all written in-house. But I had this great idea, I thought, for Columbo, so I wrote a story up. And then I went to Los Angeles on vacation, gave it to somebody who gave it to somebody else. It finally somehow got its way to a guy named Peter Fisher, who was a story editor on Columbo. And then I got a phone call saying, can you come in and see me? And
Are you kidding? Really?
No, this is the old days, remember? And
Sure.
he said, you know, this sat on my desk for about 3 weeks, and I finally read it, and this isn't bad, but you need to do this, and this, whatever it was. And I said, yeah, okay. So then I went away, and I came back the next day, and I hand-delivered it back. I said, okay, I made all the changes. He said, well, you didn't need to do it the next day. I said, well, I'm leaving. I'm going back to London tomorrow. He said, well, I'm going to offer you the screenplay.
Oh, my.
The teleplay for this.
How exciting.
I said, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
And you're 24 years old?
Yeah. He said, why not? I said, because I have to go back to England tomorrow. He said, well, in these special circumstances, don't you think you could, you know, postpone your trip? I said, no, it's a prepaid ticket, and I can't do that, but I appreciate it. So I went back to London, and then he called me about a week later. He said, okay, you want to write it in London?
Oh, man.
So I did. So when I finally went back to Los Angeles for good, I had one credit, but it was a terrific credit. It was a Columbo.
And that proves something about the power of no. Sorry, I'm not available. Really makes them want you.
Yeah, it was. And again, had I been, you know, living in Los Angeles, I would have known that there was no way this could have happened. So,
well, exactly. Even 30 years ago, Michael, that's an extraordinary story.
So I had a good, you know, I had one good credit to kick things off with.
So when you sold that first Columbo script, and you're writing it in London, did you mail it back to Peter Fisher? Fax it?
I did.
I mean, this is pre-internet. This is when things were pretty clunky.
Yeah, this is pre-everything. This is the Stone Age.
Yeah.
So I sent it via TomToms.
So right, did you think to yourself, okay, this could be a career?
No, I had formed a little production company, and I had a couple of partners, and we made 2 or 3 small budget movies. So, I mean, I was trying to get into a career, but I really didn't, I was happy about the Columbo, but I didn't really think much about it on that level. And then it was only when I pulled up stakes and came back to the States and went to Los Angeles that I thought, okay, now, I'll try and pursue this. As I say, I wrote a second episode of the show called Harry O, and that helped.
At this time, had you had an agent yet?
No, because no one would represent me.
Even though you had a premiere credit?
No, they weren't interested. But I finally, after the Harry O got sold, there was, and that was Peter Fisher again. And then I wrote, like, of the second season, they did 2 seasons Harry O, I wrote like 7 of them. And during that time, at some point, I got an agent who was still a good friend of mine, a guy named Lou Pitt, who used to be at ICA.
Sure.
ICM, rather.
So you're generating credits at this point rather quickly, and you're still in your early mid-20s.
Yeah, I was in my late 20s by that point.
So by now you're thinking, this is a career.
Right. Well, hopefully. And I mean, the first big thing on that level that happened was that I got an overall deal at Universal. And then I was there for 5 years.
For the listeners who don't understand some of these nuances, define an overall deal.
An overall deal was that you would make a deal with the studio and they would pay you, there was a guarantee of X amount. And then, if you got onto a show, for every episode, it was X amount. And so the idea was you tried to at least get up to your guarantee so the studio wasn't overpaying you. And then, of course, the idea was to make more than your guarantee.
So basically, it was the old studio system for writers and producers.
It was. When I got to Universal, there had been some meetings with Glenn Larson, and he wanted me to come on to McCloud. That was part and parcel of making the overall deal, that the studio knew that I had a spot there.
Now, when that happened, when you met with Glenn and he brought you onto McCloud, did you then become exclusive to Glenn? Were you available for other executive producers? And
when you work for Glenn Larson, you basically, were working for him. But theoretically, I was working for the studio.
Right.
But I did a lot of work with Glenn over those, first 5 years.
Tell us a little bit about that experience, because I think it became a very close relationship, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, Glenn's a good guy, and it wasn't always a walk in the park. He was a very kind of driven and motivated guy, but he was a lot of fun as well. He's a funny guy. We did a lot of good things together, and I had experience with Glenn so I had to write this first McCloud, which was called Bonnie and McCloud, and it was a trucking show. And the very first scene, McCloud drops off his date at a hotel or somewhere, and the cab driver says, "That'll be $20." McCloud reacts and pays him, and then the cab driver says, "This is a rough area. You want me to wait?" And McCloud says, "Be cheaper getting mugged." And so,
really?
Glenn, so he read that first page, and after that he said, "Okay, I don't need to read the rest of the script. You can write jokes for McCloud. That's fine."
Because you had Glenn's sensibility down, yeah. What's the process? You have an idea for a script, and you go talk to somebody about it?
I'd say, how about let's do a trucking show, because at that time, 10-4 Good Buddy and all that was really in. And he said, okay, and I came up with some story threads and told him. I didn't write anything down, as I recall. And he said, okay, that's good, just go and write that. Glenn was fairly, loose on those sort of things. You didn't have to put in a 40-page synopsis, and then, he just said, yeah, okay, that's good.
Is that how BJ and the Bear came about?
BJ and the Bear, I don't know, because I didn't create it. It was Glenn and a guy named Chris Crow, and then I'd been doing the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew mysteries, and that was winding up. And so Glenn said, well, I think I've sold this BJ and the Bear, so, come onto that as the showrunner. So I don't think Glenn had a huge fascination with trucking, no.
So what do you think the key at that point in your career, what was the key to all this progress you were seeing? Because you were really on a freight train in terms of creative output.
At a certain point, it's like I was happy to be at Universal, and McCloud was a classy show and challenging, and so...
Also, at that time, Universal had a lot going on its lot.
Oh, they had like 16 shows on there.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and so that was really the heyday of Universal TV series. And Glenn had a lot of them, then they did pilots and stuff. And
at some point in time began to collaborate with Dick Lindheim, didn't you?
Dick Lindheim was an executive at NBC. So I'd been in meetings with him on and off for various things. And then he left NBC and came to Universal. I know there was a 2-week, this was during BJ and the Bear, there was a 2-week period where he was basically came on to BJ as a producer and was kind of working for me at that point, just for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, they kicked him upstairs, and he became an executive at Universal. But that's when I'd spent a lot of time with him. We had lunch one day, and that's where the idea for the Equalizer came up, between us. And it was interesting. Had he been an executive at Universal at the time, he wouldn't have shared a credit, because that's what you're being paid to do,
right?
Is come up with ideas and deal with the creative talent, etc. But because it was in the 2 weeks where he was a producer and basically working for me and Glenn, I felt that, he deserved co-credit on it.
You had to be one of the, at that point in time, you had to be one of the youngest showrunners in Hollywood.
That could be. Those sorts of thoughts never really swirled around in my head, Bob,
Right. You're too busy. I remember your hours.
Oh, yeah, they were...
Anytime I showed up, I came in the studio, you were already there for an hour, and when I left, you were still there.
There was a lot going on, and Glenn had a lot going on, and I can't remember the show I was doing, when Glenn comes into my office and says, Nancy Drew, we've got to get the script finished tonight. We've got a first act. I need a second act. He said, so here's what happened. It's this, and this, so get this done now.
So he actually dictates an idea to you, and you stay.
Just the story beats for Act 2.
Wow.
So I said to him, well, what happens in Act 1? He said, what do you care what happens in Act 1? You're not doing Act 1. You're doing Act 2.
That's television on the fly.
Yeah. So I sit there. So I wrote 15 pages. Okay, and it ends with, Nancy in a farm or something. The guy has a shotgun on her, and end of Act 2. So I bring it into Glenn at his office. Glenn's going through. He goes, good. No. Well, you wouldn't know that. That's okay. Good. Yeah, no, I can change that. Okay, great. I said, well, what happens in Act 3? He said, what do you care what happens in Act 3? I'm not doing Act. So I walked to the door, and I turned, and I said, will I get paid for that? He said, what, for one act?
No,
that's vintage Glenn Larson.
No, there was nobody quicker in a room than Glenn, that's for sure. Let me ask, I know the answer to this question, but tell us what your process is. Are you the kind of writer who sits and thinks about it, or do you just start typing?
I don't think writers who say to you, I just sit there and I get struck by it, and then I start writing, and I don't know where it's going to take me. I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of that happening, but really, professional writers, as you know, being a professional writer, don't really, I don't think, do that. I mean, you think of an idea, then you kind of try to step it out in very broad strokes, so you have a shape at least. You're talking about writing a teleplay or a screenplay. And then, once you've got a shape that you can look at while you're, then you can write fade in. I mean, that's what I do.
Well, I just remember, and this is a personal note, when I was on BJ, and we were also doing Sheriff Lobo at the same time.
Right.
And we had a pretty crackerjack staff with Frank Lupo and Sid Ellis as executive story consultant. And I recall the need for scripts and timing and things like that, and revisions, and Glenn turning things upside down occasionally. And you would write a script, and you and I would start a script at the same time. And I felt very competitive with you, and I never won the race because you were the fastest writer I've ever met.
There was a time when I could write very quickly. I'm not slow, but I'm nowhere near the speed at which I used to do.
Yeah, it was. I think that could be one of the keys to your prodigious output. The fact that you don't worry about it, you just start writing. I mean, you just go for it.
Yeah, well, as you know, when you're on a show, particularly if you're show running it, with all the problems and the crises and whatever. However, you have to have you have to shoot. And, if a script comes in not quite right or whatever, you've got to get it down to the stage so that it's shootable and everyone feels like they've got a shot at it.
Yeah, there's something about having 150 people waiting for your pages, huh?
Right, and I tried not to let that happen too often. So there are times when, it's Friday and someone comes in and says, all right, well, this won't work, so we need two new acts by Monday, Michael. Well, you don't really have a choice.
Now, when you're a showrunner at Universal in that generation, tell me a little bit about the casting process, because there were a lot of really big-name guest stars on a lot of Glenn Larson shows.
Glenn had a good relationship with a lot of actors who became guest stars, and we had 2 or 3, terrific casting directors who'd been at Universal a long time. I remember Donna Dockstader. She was very good, and then there were a couple of other guys. It was a powerful machine because it was Universal.
And they had a number of people under contract as well.
They still had that. They still had the contract program for actors.
Well, as I recall, Lindsay Wagner was part of that group, right?
She was, but it was really, again, like all casting, or the casting I've ever been involved with, it's really, you come in and you do a terrific reading, you've got a real shot to get the role.
Now, Michael, you said you started out as an actor. At this point, did you have any regrets about that? Did you have the acting bug still, or were you?
No, believe me, Hollywood is very happy I didn't stay an actor. I'm a have been over my career, a very actor-friendly producer. I really care about actors, and I think it's very tough. And I don't care how successful you've been or, how many good roles you've done. When you come into an office with 5 or 6 or 8 guys all sitting there glassy-eyed looking at you, and you have to read a scene, it's very tough. Even if you've got a lot of confidence, it's still a scary thing to go through. So,
because
I always tried to make the ride a little easier for him.
Yeah, I mean, the actor's life really is, it's either hot water or cold water. You're either accepted or rejected.
And it doesn't matter how many times that you've been accepted, there's always the chance that, well, you're not going to get this. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's got nothing to do with your performance. A lot of times it's, not the right match or, not the right coloring, not the right height. Now, I don't tend to do that, but a lot of producers do.
So after your stint at Universal, where'd you go from there?
After Universal, I went to a studio called MTM. You remember that?
I absolutely.
I did a kind of big TV movie there called Riviera. It only big in that it was directed by John Frankenheimer.
Uh-huh.
So that was a big name to get to direct a TV movie, and we shot it in the south of France. So that was really fun. And I developed that there as a series, but it didn't go.
That's about the time, isn't it, when the Equalizer surfaced?
I came up with the Equalizer right before I left Universal. I wrote the pilot, and then it didn't sell initially. And then I left, and then they sold it to CBS, and then they got the call, okay, when can Michael shoot the pilot? And they said, well, Michael doesn't work here anymore. He works at MTM. And they basically said, well, we're not going to do it unless he does at least the pilot.
Well, that's a major oops on their part, isn't it?
Yeah, and I must say MTM, the guys running MTM, really, they said, sure, you can go and shoot that.
That was very generous of them.
We'll drop and pick him up. Now, they said if it gets picked up for a series, then, he's here, and he would he could consult or something, but, he wouldn't be able to do the day-to-day. But I did do the pilot, and then it got picked up.
Were you involved in the casting of Edwin Woodward?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because nobody wanted him initially but me.
Well, yeah, he's not exactly a hot American TV name. How did that come about?
No, I knew who he was, because having lived in England, and he had done a British thriller series called Callan, which nobody in the States had ever seen. So I wanted him, but CBS, they knew of Breaker Moran, but certainly the studio, Universal, weren't high on the idea. So I sent him the script, and I said, you have to put 4 scenes on the videotape for the studio and the network while he was in England. So he does the 4 scenes, and we send it to Black Tower, and I go up there, and they watch it, and they all say, look, he's a terrific actor, but this isn't the Equalizer. There's no way. He's British, and he's Michael wants a short little fat guy to be the Equalizer?
He's not leading man looking.
No. So we went over to CBS, and we ran the tape for Harvey Shepard, who was the head of TV at that time. And, you turned down the lights, and after all wow, how about that traffic on the 405, etc. And remember, there are 4 scenes. So we ran the first scene. And after the first scene, Harvey Shepard says, okay, stop, I don't need to see any more of this. And all the Universal guys are looking at me saying, see, we told you.
Yeah.
And Harvey Shepard got up, turned the lights on, turned around and said, Michael's right, that's the Equalizer. At which point, to quote Michael Gleason, they said, yes, we were behind Michael 100%.
Of course.
Right, suddenly everybody's right. I love it.
I was very happy that he got the role.
So you went from, so the Equalizer's up and running, it's percolating along, as it were, and you're still at MTM.
I was at MTM, then I went to Viacom, then I went back to Universal. And then when I went back to Universal, I did 41 new episodes of the old Alfred Hitchcock show, which was really great to do.
That must have been great fun as a writer.
But it was great fun to write and to be a part of Hitchcock, yeah, because it was a fun show, and the scripts were good. And the first guest star was Melissa Anderson, who then I later married. That was how we met.
Is that how you met?
Yeah. Yeah, most people think we met on The Equalizer because, she played Woodward's daughter in 2 special 2-part episodes, but we actually hadn't met until she did the first episode of Alfred Hitchcock.
Then at some point in time, you wound up on Kung Fu because you hired me on that show.
I did.
That was a big deal, bringing David Carradine into television.
It was a big deal.
Tell me your process there. I mean, you're a very quick study, but you were not a Kung Fu master. How does a writer step into something like that and become a Shaolin master of those kinds of scripts?
Well, you can do a little reading on it and a little research on it, but eventually it's all about good stories and good storytelling.
Because the fan base really looked at that show as authentic in many ways.
Well, a lot of it was. It was a very fun show to do. It really was.
Well, I enjoyed writing it because I like to learn something every time I write a script. So I just remember doing intense research, realizing I would never become a green belt, much less become a master. But the philosophy of the Shaolin priests and all that I thought was intriguing. And what was really inspiring to me was to see David Carradine, whom I'd really only seen like in Westerns and gangster movies, to see him embrace that persona.
He was great for me to work with. It was not a walk in the park, but as far as he and I were concerned and got on, he was great. And one of the reasons was that he loved the scripts. it had a good uplifting spiritual message.
Just to show you how shallow I am, I remember the wonderful crew jackets the studio gave everybody.
Oh, yeah, which I still have mine. Do you still have yours?
Oh, do you?
No. You know, if you kept every
done
crew
with it?
jacket you ever had, there wouldn't be room for your regular clothing.
Well, that's true. I don't have any of my other crew jackets, but I do have Kung Fu.
So from Kung Fu, you went into a string of, when I look at your credit list, it looks like a lot of freelance work.
I did a couple of TV movies, and then I was on the last season of Outer Limits, and I did a show called Call of the Wild that was shot in Vancouver for the Animal Planet, which was the first fictional show they'd ever done.
I'm not going to let you gloss over Baywatch Nights.
Oh, Baywatch Nights. Yes, well, one of my finest hours. For sure.
You and me both. I recall it well.
Excuse me, but it was a very, very popular show.
It was a popular show.
Everybody loved that show.
Well,
I just wrote a script for it.
Right. I think you and I both got kind of wrangled into that by Maurice Hurley, who at that time was
probably,
running
because Maurice was on the first season of Kung Fu with me.
So let's jump forward in time now, because I'm really intrigued. The Equalizer feature film starring Denzel Washington is about to come out in, 3 weeks?
That's right.
Tell me about how that's all come about.
It was one of those things where I didn't realize for a long time that I owned feature rights to The Equalizer. Nowadays, if you create a series, the studio or the production company, they take all the rights. But in those days, nobody thought, who would, make a movie out of a TV show you could see for free?
Right.
So I retained the feature rights, the book rights. I retained all rights except the TV rights, which are, of course, owned by Universal. So once I realized that I actually owned the rights
So you don't skip over this. How did you come to realize that? I mean, are you looking at old contracts?
No, I was talking to an agent, as I recall. He was talking about The Equalizer had been one of his favorite shows, and he said, he said something to me like, do you ever think about trying to get it made as a feature? And I said, well, that wouldn't be up to me. That'd be up to Universal. He said, He said, did you ever get an upfront payment, like 20, 25 grand or something for it? I said, no. He said, well, then if they didn't pay you for it, it belongs to you.
That's a good agent.
Yeah, and he did. It was just someone I was chatting with. It wasn't my agent. So anyway, I looked into it and found that was indeed the case. So then I got it out there with another guy, and we pitched it to 2 or 3 studios. First time I ever pitched The Equalizer, the executive looked at me and said, "You know who'd be great in this?" I said, "No." He said, "Will Ferrell." I'm sorry. What?
I'm in the wrong room. Right.
You make it a comedy, and I said, "Well."
I guess he didn't quite get your vision.
No, I don't think so. So anyway, I finally got it to this company called Escape Artists. One of the executives there is close to Denzel Washington and said, he would be great. In fact, funnily enough, and I told Denzel this when we were shooting, Melissa, about 7 years ago, came into my office and said, it would be a great feature, Robert McCall, Denzel Washington. So anyway, that was all. 7 years later, I'm talking to Denzel. And
I think you better keep Melissa around.
Yeah, for sure.
So while the feature's in development, what inspired you to start writing a novel?
Well, I'd been in touch with an editor at St. Martin's Press who had been originally with the Weinstein Company, so he was aware of the development of The Equalizer. The very first scene in the novel I wrote without having any idea what the rest of the plot was about. I just sent it to him, and that was about 4 years ago. And then when the movie got greenlit, he came back later and said, "Okay, we'll order a novel." When
you're writing the novel and you've pre-sold it, basically, are you thinking of the character as Woodward or as Washington?
Probably more Woodward than Washington. Denzel plays it much more isolatory and intense, and I mean, really brilliantly, I have to say. But it was a little bit. It was somewhere between the two. I had a vision in my mind.
Mm-hmm. And the book has been released.
The book, St. Martin's Press published it about 2 weeks ago.
So
congratulations.
Absolutely. I expect you'll see a bump in sales once the picture really hits the theaters.
Well, I'm hoping so. I mean, that would certainly make sense that there's some collateralization there, and particularly if the movie gets some good reviews.
So is there another Equalizer novel on the way? Because I have a feeling we could be speaking with the next Len Dayton here.
Well, I would be thrilled to write a sequel to The Equalizer, and that would be great.
How long did the book take you to write?
About 8 months, I guess.
So when you were writing your book, do you set aside a certain amount of hours per day? Yeah. Are you the kind of guy, do you ever have writer's block, or are you like a machine?
I'm not like a machine, but writer's block, I certainly, if I hit a bump in the road where I know I can't work it out, then I stop. I was very friendly at one time with a guy named Patrick McGowan. You know who that is?
Sure.
Whenever we'd be together and I was wrestling with some script, he'd say, "Michael, let it percolate." And so I'll let it percolate. But
probably good advice.
Yeah, it was. What I did on the Equalizer book was I figured to make the deadlines and I had to write a chapter a week, and I wrote very long chapters to begin with. Then I chopped them all down. But initially, they were like 20 pages. I had to write 4 pages a day. So I would write a chapter a week for 20 weeks. So, but you have to have the same kind of discipline that you have in writing a screenplay. Or a teleplay, because otherwise it's too hard. It just doesn't get done. So I kept to that discipline of writing 4 pages a day.
You've done so much work, and you've worked with so many great actors and actresses. Besides Melissa now, who was the most enjoyable actor and actress that you have worked with?
Lindsay Wagner was fun to work with. She was terrific. And, I enjoyed working with Carradine. I mean, as I say, he was not a walk in the park, but he was great with me, and he put a lot of work into the show. He was fun. Dennis Weaver was wonderful. I would have worked again with him in a heartbeat. David Jansen was wonderful. He was a wonderful guy and a wonderful humorous guy. And I like working with Sean Cassidy. He was fun on the Hardy Boys. I know 2 actors I loved working with Robert Vaughn and David McCallum when I did The Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Oh yeah, those guys were so
and they
cool.
both became
that was a great
good,
show.
They really became very good friends of mine. And of course, David's now on NCIS and has a whole new persona. And, Bill Shatner's a good friend of mine. I've had a lot of fun with Bill. He's never worked for me as an actor, but he directed an episode of Kung Fu and did a terrific job.
With all of you're so multi-talented. You have your writing, directing, acting, and just as a person who...
I dropped the acting off that.
Okay. But you're so multifaceted. One of the keys I see is your ability to maintain relationships with people you worked with, which is fairly unusual in the business because, in my experience, the business is we're all intense friends while we're working, and the minute we go off onto something else, we have new friends.
Right. Well, I've always felt a great kinship with actors I've worked with and with crews I've worked with, and I try and use same actors again or the same crew again, members of the crew when I can. And even if there are lapses, if you've had a good relationship, you can pick up a relationship, even if it's not a close friend, 20 years later, and it's like...
Well, it's kind of like this phone call.
Yeah, and no time's gone. I remember when I was doing BJ and the Bear, you'll remember this, Bob, we had Ed Lauder in it playing Captain Kane.
Right.
And I hadn't seen Eddie Lauder in years, and I directed something for the U.S. Army in a counter-terrorist group. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could tell you about it, but I'd have to kill you. So,
thank you.
So I asked. It was a 5-day shoot, and I needed somebody substantial, but there was no money. So I called Ed out of the blue, and I said, "I know we haven't talked in a long time, Michael. How are you?" So anyway, he came and did the gig for me, and it was like no time had gone by at all. I think you can maintain relationships with actors and crews and people you've worked with. You never know when you're going to get thrown together again.
Sure.
And usually it's all very genuine. I've really enjoyed the people I've worked with.
What is your self-assessment? What is your principal talent? What is behind this incredible run you've had? There are a lot of good writers out there who can't get into show business, who've never broken through the studio gates, who've never written a single episode, much less 150,000 like you have. So you have to have something unique going. I wonder if you have any notion of what it might be.
I don't. Maybe a visual sense. As I say, I tend to see the movie in my mind, and then I just write down what I've just seen. I mean, maybe it's something like that. And a sense of humor. I've had a fairly good sense of humor. You may recall on and off. Indeed. Over the years, and that that helps. Both on this page and in relationships. So apart from that, I have no idea.
I'm curious, Michael, if you had to do anything all over again in your career, is there anything that you would change?
I don't think so, because I was never in a situation where, I was in a series and then, okay, it's going another year. No, I don't want to do that. So there's always things that you hope for, but I've never said no to something and then later regretted it that I can recall. No.
And because you've done so much work in television, I'm curious what you think of...
I can tell you one thing. Right at the very beginning of my career, I was offered, after I'd done Harry O., I was offered a producer's place on Charlie's Angels, the original, and I turned it down.
That was an iconic TV show for sure.
Yeah, that was pretty stupid. But I don't even remember why I did it at the time.
Well, Aaron Spelling would have loved you.
Yeah, well, that would have been fun.
One of the things that has become kind of a theme for us is there are an awful lot of people interested in show business careers. What advice would you give somebody who was either coming out of school or had serious ambitions to become a writer-producer? How would they break into the business today?
Well, obviously, it's a lot tougher now than it was when I broke in. But I think the thing is, if you're a writer, unlike an actor, or to a certain extent even a producer, where a project has to come to you, or you can buy the rights to a book or whatever. But a writer or a painter, there's nothing to stop you sitting down and writing something. I would encourage any young writer to do that, because even though the odds against anyone ever bothering to read it are high, those rules get broken. You can do something proactive, i.e., sit down and get something written, or put something together, or put a website together, or buy the rights to a book. And there are things that you can work on that you don't have to wait for someone to say, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. You can do that on your own. And if you're a writer, there's nothing to stop you writing.
Great advice.
Look at the shows you really love, but write something that you feel is a good representation of your work and your thoughts and your vision. Have ammunition. Work on stuff that when an opportunity arises, you're not caught out.
Great advice. Yeah, just saying you're a writer doesn't make you a writer. Writing makes you a writer.
For writer-producers, there's a lot of guys who can call themselves a producer who don't actually produce anything. But you can certainly, if you're a writer-producer, you can go to work on something that you care about, that matters to you, whether you think anybody's going to ever read it or not, because you know what? You never know.
Perfect. Michael, this hour has just flown by, and I cannot tell you how much we appreciate your time.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you again, Bob, after all these years.
It's been awesome.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate you calling.
All righty, man. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How cool was that?
I really enjoyed that podcast.
Well, Michael has a lot of class, and he has the background, an unparalleled background. What I am impressed by is the fact that he's not only a phenomenal television and movie writer, and now he's a novelist.
And let's get that book so he can autograph it.
Absolutely. Speaking of books,
we have our book coming out, Where Hollywood Hides, Santa Barbara, Celebrities in Paradise.
It's available on the website at Where Hollywood Hides at a 20% online discount. Be coming directly from the publishers, or it'll be on Amazon or at your local bookstore.
I'm really excited about the book. I hope everybody enjoys it.
It's been a great experience.
Yes, it has.
All right, well, that's it for today.
This is Suzanne Herrera-McCullough.
And this is Bob McCullough. Want to say thanks for being with us.
See you next time.
Today's music is provided by Chance McCullough, and you can hear more of his original soundtracks at chancemccullough.com. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, please take a minute and give us a 5-star rating and a quick comment or review at iTunes/Where Hollywood Hides. Those reviews really do help get the word out. And drop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/Where Hollywood Hides and hit that like button.
And just as a reminder to our growing audience of listeners, be sure to check out our website at wherehollywoodhides.com for show notes, photos, and the latest showbiz news. And please click onto our Amazon banners to take you directly to the world's largest online shopping mall. Whatever you're looking for, from books to movies to supplies, it's at Amazon.com. And the links at wherehollywoodhides.com are the quickest way to do your shopping.